So we'll call the Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 meeting of the Missoula County Election Advisory Committee to order. And I'll turn it over to you, Bradley, to do roll call.
Yes, I have it right here. So Christina Barsky is not present. Cameo Flood.
Present.
Denver Henderson's not going to be able to make it today. Kathy Nygaard. Not in just yet. Amber Schaefer.
I just received a message that she will not be attending.
Not going to be able to make it today. Susan Mace. Travis Hoffman.
Present.
Clara Bentler.
Present.
Todd Mowbray.
Present.
Kathy Whitman.
Here.
And Commissioner Slotnick's not able to make it today. Do we have any other county officials? Any members of the public here who'd like to identify themselves? If you didn't hear it, Von Dean's in here. She just took a seat right over here to the side. Von Dean Kopetsky with the Republican Central Committee. Perfect. Okay.
Can
I
I get
will.
a motion? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to hand it over to you here, Travis.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Any discussion or changes that need to be made to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Those opposed, say no.
Hi.
Here.
And the agenda is approved. So approval of the meeting minutes for the October 11th, 2022 meeting of the Election Advisory Committee. Can I have a motion to approve those?
Second.
Second.
Any corrections or discussion that needs to happen with those? All those in favor of approving the recorded minutes from the October 11th, 2022 meeting, say aye. Those opposed, say no.
Aye.
And minutes are approved. Are there any members from the public who would like to provide some public comment for anything that's not listed on the agenda?
I would. I didn't want to put this on the agenda because I wanted Nathan and Bradley a chance to look at it. And this is a voter's pamphlet that's put out by King County in Washington, and you may be familiar with it. I don't know. I know you've mentioned in the past that you shy away from doing this because of partisan reasons. King County does it, and all the candidates, and they put disclaimers at the top of every page saying, that these were submitted by the candidates. We did not correct punctuation, grammar, or content, or fact checking. So, but it does give people a chance to see who's running and for what. So I thought we could put it on the agenda for next meeting. And in the meantime, you guys could look at it and see if we could discuss it. And if your stance remains the same, fine. If this softens it, it might be worth discussing.
Absolutely. I'm always open to it. It's actually the number 2 requested item from our voters in the last scientifically conducted survey. Hey, Susan, how you doing?
Good. Sorry I'm late. Been
You're
having
totally,
some internet trouble today.
You're totally fine. We just ran through and did a little bit there. So I'm sorry. Travis, let me just pass it right back to you. I'm going to be quiet and let you run this.
Oh, you're good.
With this pamphlet, it was our number 1 request. I'm also have extreme caution. I feel honored that voters want information directly from our office. And I want to make sure it maintains that status. And so let's take a look at this. And then Nathan and I can dig in and explore a little bit about what that looks like. What could something look like? And then we'll bring it up for discussion at the next meeting. And we'll have had a chance to look into this and even ping it off the state a little bit.
Okay.
Because they're doing their own. And I just want to be really cautious about how we would look at this and approach this. And you guys know my stance. I love the elections office being the best source of information, and I wouldn't want anything to taint it, even if it's something that people choose to believe based off of this information. The big concern is that people don't reply. And if only Republicans reply and only Republicans are featured, we will hear about it. And I don't know if it's something we want to track and work through the administrative function of running the election. That being said, we always want to be the leaders, so let's take a peek and see.
Thanks.
Yeah, and we're right in that spot on public comment for items not on the agenda. Sorry, Monty, come, you can sit up here.
Oh, I just want to thank you. I just want to ask a question about that. Is there any data on how many of these went out and what the readership is? Because one of the things we always hear is people want the data, but very few people actually read it. Is there anything?
There isn't. They mail one to every registered voter.
They do?
Yes.
And is there a cost to that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
There is. I used, Yeah.
Cost is.
well, my experience, I used to be the contractor to print the states here in
Okay.
Montana.
Okay,
And that was a run of around 600,000, if I remember right. But of course, it had no candidates. It had just, although it may have, I don't recall, it's been 25 years since I've been in the printing business.
prices have gone up.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they have. Although there's a surplus of newsprint, I'll tell you that. Because nobody's using it. So it was a substantial figure in those days, but it was 600,000 as opposed to what 30,000 here.
Thank you.
But as far as the readership in King County, I don't know.
Well, I think that's a question we always have with everything we send out.
sure.
So I just ask, it's kind of an open-ended question. If anybody has data, I think we'd all like to know what that is for this and for other things that we consider doing.
Yeah.
It's good to know if anybody ever looks at it.
Mhm. Okay,
Any additional public comment? Kathy, you have your hand raised?
Yes, for those of us that are not in the room and can't see who all is there, excuse me, when we have public comment like that, could we have the people identify themselves and perhaps who they're with so that we can follow along as what's happening?
Oh, good idea. Yeah. I'm
Thank
Todd
you.
Mowbray. I'm with the Democratic Central Committee.
Todd's on the EAC. We also have Von Dean Kopensky. She's the only member from the public here. And that was Von Dean. She's the chair of the Republican Central Committee.
Hi, Kathy.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is old business. Do we have any old business? I don't see anything listed on the agenda, so we'll move into election administrator update.
Hey guys, I sent out the video link last week. So we've had a few things that have been in flex since last week. The big items that we were working on here are hiring. We have an open position. We had received in 18 applications that made it through the screening process. We have a pretty strict screening process that it goes through before any applications come to our office. Our office, before receiving any applications, establishes screening criteria and a rating scale for those screening criteria. We have gone through yesterday and today and reviewed the applications that were received. And we're excited that in the next week, we should be starting to schedule interviews with our top candidates. We're going to interview quite a few candidates to make sure that we can look at a very wide swath of different people. One of the big things that we've noticed with the elections office is that people come here through retirement. So taking 7 hours to run through interviews now may be very beneficial for us in the long run because it's not a high turnover position. As we go through this, we're excited. We've had applications both locally and nationally on this, so that's very exciting. This is what is considered an entry-level position at the county. So to have received 18 applicants at a job that pays the rate of $18.81 is fantastic. We've always talked about the fact that it is paid public service working for this department. And I know that that's part of the reason why we had received so many different applications in. So that's a little bit of an update from where we were last week. Last week it was, the position's open and we should get applications soon. And so now we've kind of gone through that process. We've gone through, screened them, rated those interviews. And then just before this meeting, Nathan sent out the final updates to our HR group. And so we are ready to kind of proceed forward on that. Questions about the open position and hiring. This was Bobby Day. And so Bobby Day has retired. She is enjoying the sunshine and time off.
Is the criteria long and complicated that you use to screen it, or can you give us a little rundown?
We're looking at about 6 main areas, and forgive me because I don't have them in front of me. Starting with your data entry and database skills, looking at customer service skills, working on standard office equipment. So, database obviously pertinent towards the statewide voter database, filing management, retention, those areas. And then general office skills, Excel, Word, Outlook, Teams, all of these things that are critical to our job. And then we did have a specific criteria which added for elections experience. And so, did I miss any?
Education.
Education. Marking it as, it's a rating of 1 to 5 stars. 3 stars is meets the expectation, 5 stars is exceeds, and 1 star doesn't meet it. As an example for education, it was, if you are a GED, you receive 3 stars. If you have an AS, it would be 4 stars, or BS 5 stars or higher. Noting that a college degree is not pertinent towards doing this level work. As we went through there, we've been able to rate them, review them, and then now we're sending it back to our HR team, who will begin to reach out to candidates and let them know that you were either not successfully screened in or selected for an interview. And so we're hoping to have a great round of interviews starting hopefully as soon as next week. Some of this really depends on the schedules with our HR department and hiring team, as well as also, is there a time that works between all of the legislative new database meetings and other items we're doing that we can coordinate it? Excited about this opportunity. We have been very fortunate. We did receive 1 union employee, which will be included in the hiring pool. Had we received 2 union employees, we would have interviewed those 2 employees first before any external candidates. So we're hoping to interview external candidates and our 1 union employee in the next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I touched on it a little bit. Oh, sorry. Kathy, I see your hand up. Is that still from earlier? I'm going to take that as a yes. I touched on it just a little bit. The database. We are in the transition from the Montana Votes database, the statewide voter database, to ElectMT. ElectMT is the new voter database implemented by the Secretary of State's office, and it will be live on the 17th. So this week, no data entry can take place. We are pulling reports. We are pulling information from the historical reference. But as of the last Friday, there is a 1-week pause as the data is converted to the new database, uploaded and confirmed correct. And then as we go through that, we will then turn around and starting next week, we should have our new voter database out live. With this, I got a daily meeting at 10 o'clock to go through and do a status update. Known bugs, known issues to help work. We are coming into this with a list of improvements that will grow starting on day 1. So there'll be a lot of work that is needed to transition smoothly and improve it from where it sits. We tested this database pretty extensively. It has been a 5-year production. And at the final vote for this database, I abstained from the vote because I was not able to partake in the full testing. But other elections administrators who did go through the full parallel testing stated that they felt like it was ready. Any transition will come with bugs. Any transition will come with a steep learning curve. Our staff came in for a week of training last week. It was a half day each day of the week. And we got an update on that database, which was a refresher from previous trainings. And we're excited to work with this new database coming forward. Questions about that? Sorry, yeah.
For the sake of the guests, Todd Mowbray with the Democratic Central Committee. So this database has nothing to do with voting. It's the one that tracks your ballots and your registration and addresses and all of that, right?
Yes and no. It definitely deals with voting because it tracks what district you're in,
Yeah.
whether you get a ballot, but it doesn't tabulate any ballots.
No, but
This is for voter registration, maps, and integration about, when you get the list from our office of when a ballot was sent or received,
Yeah.
it comes from that database. So it's a statewide register.
so when you check on the Secretary of State's and it says your ballot's been received, this is the database that handles
Exactly.
that. So is there any significant value in archiving the old data in the old format?
The old database will remain alive for about 5 years.
Okay,
And so in this test review format, and then in about 5 years, it has had a full transfer to the new database. The idea is hopefully by that point in time, anything that you found that you needed, you've got it. I can guarantee you, as I come back and I look for documents from 2007, that there are things that you forget you need. But, like that standard process, so they are maintaining a historical record.
Yeah.
But it does cost to keep that alive, server space, maintenance, and other items. So I think that, don't quote me on the exact time frame. I believe it was 5 years.
I see. Are those costs maintained by the state or by the
Fully
county?
covered by the state, yep.
Yeah, so will you be running some smaller elections?
So that was a big area that we worked on with the state. The original inclusion in 2019 was, guess what? In 2020, hey,
Sorry, I'm late.
we will have a new voter database.
Uh-huh.
Rolling out a new voter database in a 1-year time frame for a federal election cycle is not a smart maneuver. This has been worked on time and time again. We had actually worked with the Secretary of State to not implement this database when we did not feel that it was ready. This will allow us, in Missoula County, there's no such thing as a small election. But we'll start with our school and our special district election, which is a lot lower participation. But if school district 1 is included for a race, that could be a 50,000 ballot election. These are much smaller than federal, primary, or general elections. So it is the best possible implementation timeline.
Yeah.
I mean, testing it with small elections, Missoula County will be running large elections for all 3 elections, almost guaranteed. School and special district, I expect a municipal primary and a municipal general election. And so,
I was thinking like Bonner or Target Range.
yeah, I wish we would, and it only depends if we can get a small election like that. As we went through, we did have counties as large as Butte, Silverbow going through, and can you guys see me? I am so sorry. We did have counties as large as Butte, Silverbow in the parallel testing that signed off on the final go, no go decision. So we've had some pretty substantial tests. We've had some pretty good areas. What we haven't had is a stress test. 56 counties logged in, recording thousands of ballots at the same time. That was why I abstained from that vote. Without a significant end-to-end test and a stress test, I don't know where it sits. Those who ran a parallel test without any stress on the system, different story. So we've got it. It'll be maintained for a little bit. All the costs are fielded by the state, and it's about the best time we can get. It is a ramp up, noting that many counties don't even run school special district elections this spring.
So is the public interface gonna still use that My Voter page?
I'm going to update that as soon as the new link is live next week. So
is it
myvoterpagemt.com will just redirect to the new
the new
public portal.
database? Okay.
Yep.
That's-
Because that's ours. Missoula County owns that. We just wanted something that was easier than apps.mt.gov/voterinfo.
Well, I guess that's the one I'm asking about then, is that state one?
The state
same
one
Is
will
gonna
get,
interface with the new database?
it should. That'd be a better question for the state. I know it has a public facing portal. I don't know for sure that when
Okay.
they're gonna implement
We've
that.
heard the plans.
Yep, but it's actually got a very great public facing portal. I'm not certain what all they're implementing live, but it does have a really nice feature of, I can take a picture of the entryway to the school voting area and post that on the public portal. So not only do you want to know where to go to vote, Lowell School, well, you're going to go to Lowell School and you're going to go to the west door right here and it's signed elections entrance like this. And this is what you look for. With first-time voters and a potential for new voting locations in the 2024 election, what a great feature. There are so many things I'm excited for. I have a fear of the unknown. What are we going to catch for a bug? What is going to be this next area? Because a bug in a voter database can have very large scale implications. So app.mt.gov should go there. My voter page definitely will. Sorry, let me check up here. You guys, any questions about the new voter database? I'm very excited about some of these features that are streamlining, taking human elements out of this. A great example of an area that's an improvement for this database is processing voter registers. When you go to vote at a polling place, you sign a register, that list of voters. Voters are manually assigned voting credit from that register. Human beings, after the election, go page by page, line by line through and state, yes, Rebecca, you did vote because you signed this line in here. Anytime we have human involvement, we have the opportunity for errors. And what were there, 19 irreconcilable differences between the registers and what was entered into the database?
Yes.
The new database utilizes a scanner, pulls through, assigns credit, and captures a voter signature. When we hit the 2020 election cycle, we had voters who were rejected who had been voting regularly because their signature had changed. They voted at polling places. Polling place signatures aren't scanned into the database until this year, where they'll be automatically recorded when they assign voting credit. So we'll have those updated signatures for those voters. And we know it's that voter because they've shown ID when they come in to vote and sign that register. So I'm excited about items like that. A little bit of a fear of, hey, how's this going to work when the rubber hits the road next week? Other questions about that? I'm taking a ton of time here, guys, because I don't know that we have a lot to hit. I do have a pretty healthy update from Christina. Okay, legislative update. I think I was at 281 bills the last time I checked with the subject of elections. This includes drafts. This includes bills that have just been requested and not drafted. And this also includes the start of bills being assigned numbers. I know from our local delegation, we have a bill that I've been asked to reply in on. So we're starting to see bills. They really range. I know that we have hand count bills floating out there as drafts. They have not, as requests. They have not been drafted. They have not come through. I know that we've had requests to eliminate all absentee voting. We had requests to change equipment and security. Things like post-election audits. As we go through this, my job is to take a look at these bills and what the implication is to our administrative process here, and if there is a negative impact towards voters. A good example of a bill that I've been asked to comment on so far is continuous count. In the 2019 legislature, they allowed counties the opportunity to begin counting on the Monday before the election to provide accurate election results and as complete election results as possible by 8 p.m. on election day. There has been a continuous count bill so that you must run continuously from the first time you count till the end. This adds the opportunity for human error, requiring people to run continuously, staffing this area continuously. We have detail-oriented processes such as ballot resolution, duplicating a ballot if there's an error made by a voter that the machine can't read that ballot. All of these processes tag in, and this is a bill that we're going to oppose. What we have found in the past is that allowing us to pause the process and decreased errors provided better results out as close to 8 p.m. as possible. And we have safeguards in place in the elections process that prevent any tampering with the elections, including things like seals on ballots, recorded seals on equipment, ballot count numbers, and video surveillance and an alarm system in our building. Many counties follow similar practices. Obviously, Missoula County is a leader in election integrity, but we already have these steps in place, and we don't need to make it extra opportunity for errors, harder to train staff, retain staff. I don't know how many people in here have recruited for staff to come in at midnight, but that's really tough. And then what are we getting? Who are the people who are coming in? How well trained are they? And how well trained are the people who are leading it? So there's a lot of errors with that. There's a lot of issues. And then a big one we are watching is combining school district elections with general elections. There are concerns about this based off of the number of splits that may create. A split
Are you
is
okay, Brenda?
the unique items you get to vote on. You would receive a precinct, but then if a precinct was over 2 different school districts, we would have a split. And so we would have precinct 1.1 and precinct 1.2. The other concern is, depending on the amount of information in there, we could have a 3-page ballot. And in elections, that means front, back, and front of a separate page. There's always the potential for a voter to not return one of those 2 pages. In addition to that, there's twice the amount of printing, twice the amount of paper, twice the amount of storage and retention. And so we are working with the Secretary of State, Office of Public Instruction. And when I say we, it's the Association of Clerk and Recorders. And we are working to help make sure that this bill addresses many of these concerns. Some of the ideas that I brought up is, if this continues forward, we can run a longer ballot. Our equipment will handle a 14-inch, 17-inch, or a 19-inch ballot, and potentially a 21-inch ballot. The difference is it's 1 purchase of ballot stock, 1 ballot to read and tabulate, and instead of running 2 ballots through the machine, you are running 1 through. There is a big substantial difference in that, including retention, storage, all of those other areas. As we look at this, we want to make sure it's smart. We want to make sure it's approved by the schools. We want to work with our partners at the state level to make it the best it can be, but there are concerns. The concerns are duplicated if we look at the primary. We have printed up to 4 different ballot styles, and if we had splits and multiple pages in the primary, we would run into an incredibly expensive election cycle. The school district elections are billed school districts, and that comes from taxpayer funding, the same way our funding comes from taxpayer funding. So while the county may not eat the cost of all of that, it does get funded through tax dollars. Also, we were just talking about it. The first meeting of the Select Committee on Election Integrity is this Thursday at 4:30 at the legislative session. And so we'll be watching a couple of different committees. We'll be watching a few things. Right now, we haven't seen much. We did have a bill we supported, which requires an elected official to be a registered voter. So there are some great, simple, straightforward bills coming out, and there's a lot that are confusing with some amendments could be better. And there are some that we will be outright opposed. So similar to last time, I'll send out some updates. Right now, I've reviewed about 6 physical bills, but they're coming fast. So in the next weeks, you'll see an email from me with a list and a stance of the association and the county. This is a bill that the association supported. This is a bill that the county supported. This is a bill the association remained neutral on, and the county supported or opposed. So it'll list off each of those, noting that the county stance may be different than the association's stance. We got a busy 4 months here. So I'll be doing the best I can to get out information to you guys about this. And there may be some areas, I mean, I've already talked to Von Dien about redistricting. And I wanted to follow back up on redistricting because there's a bill at the legislature which would require redistricting to take place if a precinct exceeded 2,000 voters. When we established all of our precincts in 2013, they were as nearly even by population as possible. And now we have precincts that have 600 voters and some that have 6,000. The concern with this is a months-long process for our office to go through. Some of the new technology we use may expedite that. But if that bill passes, will this require the elections office to redistrict in the middle of a federal election cycle? Will this mean that in order to not redistrict in the middle of a federal election cycle, Missoula County establishes precincts of 750 voters? Where do those implications hit? Well, in redistricting, that precinct is that territorial unit of an election. And in the past, we've really looked at them as tied to a polling place. That's not necessarily true. As we go through and redistrict, we will establish precincts. And then after establishing precincts, we will assign precincts or parts of precincts to the polling location. This is important because when we're looking at what polling locations did we have the survey information that Christina presented, we're gonna turn around and we're gonna say, great, instead of having you drive through Lolo, past that polling place, into town to Cold Spring School to vote, we can assign this portion of that precinct to vote at the most convenient polling place. So we'll be doing a little bit of a divergence from what we've done in the past, but I've never done this before and I want it to be the best it can. So as we go into redistricting, we're looking at a grid, dividing it out. There's a lot of question about the bill at the legislature. There's been discussion of moving that up to 3,000. That changes what size our precincts would be, but they need to be as evenly possible by population. And that may hit us with rural districts. We may have a very rural district that I cannot get 1,000 voters
Four
in.
counties.
You know what I mean? And some of these House districts are split between counties. So House districts and Senate districts were set by population. But when that's divided through a county, Arlie, that's where we'll see smaller districts. And so as we go through this, I'll be working with the commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners, and also confirming that this meets the intent of the law. Because there may be some precincts that are as evenly equal by population as possible, with a large discrepancy, because it's not possible to balance those in the way that we can with 5,000 voters. Does that make sense? Rebecca, great.
Am I muted?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, good. What is that bill number that you're referring to?
I'm not positive. Let me kick that out here after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, absolutely.
Could you, to me, redistricting implies the 10-year cycle with the census. How does this local precinct, how does it relate to that? How is it different? I presume then this would be triggered just arbitrarily as population changes. And how do you know that without a census?
Good questions. So these are some of the questions we have with the bill draft. So one of the notes that I'm gonna make right now, so I don't forget, is to send you guys what bill number that is. This process is kicked off by the redistricting process off of the census that the redistricting commission does. And so this is a part of the 2020 census information, and that's what's used to define the voting blocks, and the commissions, the redistricting commission submits this to the legislature. So yes, it is population based. It's based off the census. The new rules change things. Having to redistrict if a precinct clears a population. How do we know? And some of those questions come up. Go ahead.
So that proposed law is 2,000 voters.
Mhm.
And you guys, I know you have registered voter addresses tied to their location. So I don't think it's based on the census. I think it's going to be based on the registered voters.
Yes. So original redistricting census based. Precincts are voters. So the precincts are a totally separate part. When we look at the precincts, it's a territorial unit designed to be evenly divided by the number of voters. So as we see this go up, will it be that we're polling a report and we have 2,001 voters and we didn't know until the middle of the election we're out of accordance? Would we be required to do this at 1,900 voters to ensure we don't go over 2,000 voters? Is there a penalty that may be associated with this? There's a lot of unknown as that comes through. Right now, it's basically a one-sentence addition. Redistrict if it clears 2,000 voters. So it starts with House districts and legislative districts from the census. Then from there, precincts are a territorial unit within a county as even by voters as possible. So it's not directly associated to that census data anymore. The work that's happening at the state level, this week, they should submit those maps. Did they get submitted? They have 10 days. And so from the 10th day of the legislature is their last day. So they've been submitted. What that means is there's 30 days for the legislature to make comment, and then 30 days for them to go back, approve those comments, and then submit that plan to the Secretary of State. At that day, have 45 days to establish precinct boundaries. One of the big things I'm working on is utilizing new technology, GIS integration, map points on a house associated with voters and drawing lines around them to get a district number. The voter database before was strictly based off of address library, street ranges, and it was a very manual process. When I followed up with my predecessor who had done this process here, they said, lock yourself in the office for about 3 months and you'll get it taken care of. I'm hoping with this new technology, this becomes a couple of week process. And if that's the case, that could very well change my opinion on a bill that requires you to redistrict. So there's a lot of unknowns around this redistricting process. What I think many people seem to be concerned about is that the biggest impact to a precinct is a central committee. And precinct committee men and women and the size of that central committee. When it comes to voting, polling locations and other areas, I can split and I can say that these 5 precincts all go to Bonner School. And this chunk of this other precinct does too. So by not looking at them as strictly combined, and by not looking at them as needing to be, that precinct goes to that polling place. So combining them all together and using this new technology, we may have streamlined this process drastically. Do you like all of those possibly, may, could? There's a big unknown to this. And guess what? For decades, other elections administrators have been being able to do this based off of maps and paper. We'll be able to get it done fine. Our goal is to provide it out and say, these are the proposed precinct boundaries we're looking at, and be able to receive some comments back. We have only a 45-day period. But as we start to get these tools established and created at the help of the state library and many other groups working on this database transition, then we'll have a really great idea that, yeah, it took me 2 weeks to do this. I can provide this map and you can give me comments. I think a lot of the comments are, this precinct should vote at this location, and they're not applicable to the split process we're looking at. Because my response is, yeah, we can make that happen. That poor voter who has to drive from Clinton to Lewis and Clark School to vote will no longer have to do so. The voters who have to drive from Lolo to Cold Spring School will no longer have to do so. There's a lot of unknown as this process goes on, but I'll update you guys as we go through. I see my clock's at 37 minutes. Other questions about redistricting?
I have a legislative question.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
you mentioned that you were asked to provide comment. Is that what you were getting at? That you're like testifying, or
I
are you
don't,
providing expertise, or?
when I review bills, I do it for 2 different purposes. The Association of Clerk and Recorders asks us to take a look at that bill and then provide feedback to the Association of Clerk and Recorders, and we have a legislative department at the county. I provide the updates to the legislative department, which reaches out to our delegation. What this does is it limits that direct contact so that I'm not directly responsible for reaching out to all members of the delegation. I'm not responsible for reaching out to those members who may be on a committee, and they can all get the same information at the same time. So when we look at this, it is, for example, the continuous count. This is not a great idea for elections. It causes an addition to error. It could increase turnover. It could mean that we have less complete and accurate results at 8 p.m. on election day. For these reasons, I recommend that we oppose this bill.
Thus, I is the association or this office, like the.
So that's my recommendation to either the association or
Okay.
to the commission.
Okay.
Based off of working in this field, then guess what? Like we said, you may see a differing opinion from the county and the association. In the association, there are 56 other election administrators. A great example of this is the mail ballot bill. We remained neutral as the association. There were not enough people who could support or oppose that. And so then we turned around and Missoula County said, we need to kill that bill. You know what I mean? And there's a difference, and there may be, because in Missoula County, they're leaning on my expertise. And guess what? If they disagree, they'll let me know. But it's specific around elections administration and the impact on voters. So there's not a lot of what do I think is best. It's what does it mean for extra hours? What does it mean for costs? And does that mean that it's going to be harder to get accurate information out?
Makes sense. And then when you said the election administration, so when you're looking at bills on whether or not whatever your opinion is going to be to the association or the county is excessive budgetary, like things that are outside of what you see is possible in this office's budgetary expenditure? Like, is affordability something you consider, or whether or not you can make room for a bill that would cause you to do all this, expand your budget, or, ask for more money?
We'll hit this a little bit because it's unique to Missoula County and it's something Christina covered in the survey. In Missoula County, people prioritize elections work over the cost savings. And it's one of the continual questions we ask to know what is important to Missoula voters that are responding to these surveys. Now, yes, we just did a bill and it talks about a very negligible impact to adding extra staffing time and cost. And in my write-up, I made sure to include that there will be a negligible impact for additional staffing times and costs. One of the bills that was sent out was adding an extra race to the post-election audit. And our response was, these are the concerns. They're currently selected by the Secretary of State. And it's not a mandate, it's an option. We like uniformity and we like it when somebody else helps us in this process, so we're not writing and signing our own checks. And also, if we did this, there would be a negligible impact to costs. Now, if it is a substantial impact, printing splits on school district elections for a primary election, I mean, the cost of printing alone makes that bill cost prohibitive if it goes to the primary. That'll likely become a study and go through, but yes, absolutely, I include it. And I'm really mindful of the fact that, guess what? Sometimes great things cost money. And we shouldn't kill something great just because it's gonna be a little bit more. Let's just be wise about where. And make sure that if we're gonna do large mandates, they're funded somehow. Other questions? Sorry, guys. That was like a replay of that video. And that's all I've got for the update.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is new business, so video survey, video of survey review. Not sure what that is, so I'll let you take that, Bradley.
You bet. So I plugged this in. My apologies, guys. My communication, I was out on break. I think I got a couple. There were a few that I replied to, but some that I had missed. Christina couldn't make it. She wanted to provide an update on the survey results, so she recorded a video that I'm going to play for everybody right now, if I can figure it out. Hey, can you guys all see that? Online?
Yep.
Yes, I can. Thanks, Bradley.
Let's see. Can you guys still see it online?
Yes.
Oh, technology test passed. Okay, guys, I'm just gonna play this. It speaks for itself. It's a production from video. It's a production from Christina on the survey we ran. And I've only seen very brief portions of this ahead of you guys. So a lot of this I'm gonna be watching with you as well.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this video of overview of the 2022 general election Missoula County voter survey. In this video, I'll be talking through a little bit of the survey methodology and data collection methods and provide some top line findings from the survey that we had in the field during the general election. Of course, if you have any questions after watching this video, you are welcome to reach out to me or to the folks at Missoula County to address them. So to get started, the survey that we conducted during the 2022 general election seeks to understand what voters want and voters need. But I want to put a caveat in our understanding of the survey and the data that I will be sharing, because it isn't comparable to prior surveys that we have undertaken in Missoula County. We're pretty lucky in the county that the elections department regularly seeks resident feedback to help improve the elections process and also to meet their needs. It's pretty unique to have elections department going out as regularly as ours to seek input from voters to base their decisions upon. Speaking personally, this is one of the things that makes me proud to participate in the work that we undertake together at the EAC. I want to talk a little bit about how we collected these data and then put the data in context. So first, just a general understanding about the survey. The survey was open from the time of early voting through December 28th, 2022. So lots of time for folks to participate. And unlike some prior studies that we've undertaken where we have employed utilizing a firm to make calls to a representative sample of residents, this survey used a QR code that was printed on mail ballot instructions. So if you're like me, got those trifold instructions with your ballot, and there was a QR code there that voters could scan. The QR code was available on what I'm calling palm cards, but little pieces of stiff paper at the polling place and at the elections office for voters to pick up. And the QR code was also linked on county website, social media platforms, and others. So in sum, the most important thing that I want you to understand is that the Missoula County voter survey in 2022 was open to 100% of registered voters in Missoula County. Now, moving forward, I want to talk a little bit about how we can think about this survey from 2022 in comparison to previous years. The short and sweet is that we really can't compare across these time periods. The 2022 survey utilizes a convenience sample. The survey was open to everyone, like I mentioned, and that means that those that responded self-selected their participation. This means that unlike the 2020 and 2015 surveys, the data from 2022 are not generalizable. What that means is that you can't extrapolate from the data that I will be sharing with you here to project upon the entirety of Missoula County. It just wouldn't be accurate. For one, we don't have enough identifying information about respondent demographics to know if the sample is representative of the entire county. But also, we know that in this type of methodology, this convenience sampling, we're not getting a across the board look at all the different groups and identities that are present in Missoula County at a level that is representative of their population size. So that's not to say that these data don't provide helpful and valuable insights to Missoula County elections and to us. In fact, we uncover some very important pieces of information that can help us planning in the future. And since I'm using a little bit of the survey research methodology here, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And so this is a picture I like to help explain why convenience sampling isn't the kind of thing we think about as being generalizable. So think about if you see on, the evening news or a pop-up on the Missoulian, when there's some sort of request for listeners or viewers to call in and vote on a particular issue, and then how that's reported back out to us. So we would say that the results from this type of activity are not generalizable because the sample just isn't representative. That sample, the people that replied, only reflects those that happen to be, watching the television at a time or listening to the radio or reading the newspaper and are motivated to call in. So we can't think about that group to be generalized to the whole population because the respondents aren't randomly selected, and therefore we can't say that they're representative. So just keep that with you as we talk through these next slides. So first, I want to share with you a little bit about the respondent profile. Right off the bat, it's important to note that we didn't seek specific demographic questions for the most part because we're very interested in keeping the survey short and sweet and to ensure that respondents completed it in full and left feeling unburdened and like we didn't ask too much of their time. One of the demographic questions that was asked in the survey invited respondents to select their year of birth from a drop-down menu. The drop-down menu went back to 1920 and all the way up to 2024. And these dates are generally because of the age we would expect respondents. Yes, we were thinking that somebody could be born in 1920 and participating in that election. And 2004 would make somebody 18 years of age during the election. And as you can see here, we have a pretty interesting distribution of responses. We have 37% of respondents that are saying they're between the ages of 82 and 63. We have 35% of respondents indicating that they are between the ages of 62 and 43, 24% between 42 and 23, and 2% between 22 and 18. Next, one of the questions that we were interested in understanding is whether participants in the survey are folks that have been in Missoula County for a lifetime, or maybe folks that have moved in recently. As we all know, we've seen a bit of an influx of population. Here you can see we've divided this out into a number of different groupings of years. So less than 1 year is about 6% of respondents. Between 1 and 5 years, 17% of respondents. Between 6 and 10 years, 12% of respondents. But more than 60%, 64% have lived in Missoula County for more than 10 years. This indicates to us that they have been around and participating in elections before the COVID-19 pandemic, and that they may have had some more experience with the processes that we're inquiring about. We also asked respondents to identify whether they considered themselves to be an urban voter, a voter from a smaller community, or a rural voter. And here you see, by and large, respondents indicated being urban voters, 79%, while 10% say that they live in a smaller community within Missoula County, and 9% self-identify as being voters from rural parts of the county. Finally, I think it's important to identify in our respondent sort of backgrounding that the vast majority of our survey respondents are high-frequency voters. This, of course, is to be expected. Like I mentioned, we're using a convenient sample, and that means that individuals have to take the next step to participate. They have to scan that QR code, they have to go to the link and give us their time and their opinions. And so we'd expect those that have a lot to say about elections to be folks that participate at a high degree of frequency. Moving into the next section, I'm going to share with you how we're digging into what voters want. First and foremost, we wanted to understand how respondents utilize the different modalities of voting. This question was asked as a multiple response, and so that means somebody could select more than one answer. In this response, we see that the majority, 70%, indicate voting by mail at least once. Likewise, 58% of respondents indicated having voted at a polling place at least once, and 16% indicated appearing in person at the election center. From this question, respondents were taken down different paths of questions. So those that indicated that they had voted by mail at least once received a battery of questions related to mail ballot elections. But anybody that didn't indicate voting by mail, so it's about 30% of respondents, we didn't provide them those questions because they wouldn't have had any experience with the process. In survey research, we call this applying logic, and you can think of it a little bit like an if-then scenario. One quick aside that I wanted to provide is, in addition to understanding whether somebody had voted by mail, we wanted to find out how somebody preferred to vote in federal elections. So we sought to understand in years like 2018 and 2020, how somebody would prefer to vote, not necessarily how they did vote. And here we see the numbers shifting a little bit, with a majority, 54%, indicating that they would like to vote by mail, but still a decent number, 45%, indicating some version of in-person, whether at a polling place or at an election center. Now, moving forward, understanding that this next battery of questions was only asked of mail voters, we're going to take a look at what issues are of importance and how we can think about mail voting in Missoula County. So to get us started, we asked about the issue of greatest importance to mail voters. This was a select one, not a select all. By and large, paid postage for ballot return was the most important issue to voters. That's followed by being able to drop off a ballot at any polling place, utilizing ballot drop box, and dropping off a ballot by a drive-through location. The 6% that responded other were given the opportunity to input what they would like to say. However, we didn't receive any qualitative responses from those 6%. A question of significant importance to Bradley is about the signature flap on absentee and mail ballots. So think back to the last time you saw one of our mail ballots. When you sign the affirmation envelope, the envelope has a flap that covers that signature. So as it processes through the USPS, your signature is private and protected underneath that flap. Those envelopes are a significant expense, and some places don't have a signature flap. When we asked this question, we provided an image as an example to ensure that the respondent understood what we were seeking to ask. It's important for us to notice here that 81% of respondents indicated that it's extremely or somewhat important to them that they have a signature privacy flap on their mail ballot. By far, a majority of respondents value this, and it's an important element for Bradley to consider as he's thinking about budget preparations in the future. Finally, we sought to understand why county voters like voting by mail, those that vote by mail, what they like about it. Convenience and longer voting periods, that is, receiving your ballot in advance of election day and having that time to reflect about candidates and issues, are of greatest importance to mail voters. We see significant importance in both of these elements. Two other elements that we inquired about, it being too far to travel to a polling place, and the feeling of greater confidence from voting by mail, appear to have less importance to respondents of the survey, though notably the confidence element is still of a slight margin of importance, with 56% indicating that it's either somewhat or extremely important in their decision to vote by mail. Now let's shift to thinking about our in-person voters. Recall, we employed that logic, right, that if-then scenario, to ensure that only individuals that indicated having voted in person at some point in the past in Missoula County received the in-person voter questions, and likewise only those individuals that indicated that they had voted by mail at least once in Missoula County received those questions. I also want to take us back to the earlier demographic section and think about how 45% of voters indicate that their preferred vote mode for federal elections, that's, the 2018s, the 2020s, is voting in person, either at a polling place or at the election center. So this is nearly half of our respondents that prefer this modality for voting. And so it's important for us to understand why. Thinking to this question of why do Missoula County voters like voting in person? According to our survey respondents, we heard that they value the confidence that they feel in casting their ballot in person, that they are uncertain that the mail service will reliably deliver their ballots. And to a lesser extent, we see the importance of seeing our wonderful election poll workers, and because an individual has always voted in person. Unlike our mail voters, we see here a little less of clear delineation between what's of importance and what's not of importance. I'd also like to point to the importance of the other elements. Again, other was an option for respondents to these survey questions about why you like voting in person or why you like voting by mail. But no individuals that indicated they had an other reason proceeded to fill in that open-ended option. And so we don't have much data that we can pull on here. Now I want to take a turn to thinking about the upcoming redistricting, reprecincting that will be undertaken in Missoula County. There's information that's valuable for Bradley as he begins to think through this process, including how far polling places can be located from the individuals that it serves, ideas for how long a wait individuals are willing to deal with. This can help us understand if some polling place consolidation or increasing in polling place locations are necessary to meet the needs of area voters. So according to our respondents in this survey, a plurality, that's 30%, report being willing to travel between 3 and 5 miles to their polling place. Another way that we can slice and dice these data is to think about the measure of central tendency. That's the point to which the majority, the most, a plurality, whatever it might be, but the middle point, the most impactful for us. The same thing occurs here. We see that the mean, which is the appropriate measure of central tendency for these data, say that 3 to 5 miles is the right distance for them to travel to a polling place. Paired with this, we asked about what an acceptable time to wait in line at a polling place is for a voter. Of course, the goal would always be no wait ever, but sometimes that's just not practical. And we need to be able to plan for efficiency and effectiveness as we think through redistricting. So most respondents, 44%, unsurprisingly said that it's acceptable for a voter to wait in line between 0 and 15 minutes at their polling place. 11% of respondents, on the other hand, said that it's appropriate to wait between 31 and 45 minutes. And we see here, not very many are reporting to us that wait times of 45 minutes and more are appropriate. And of course, the goal is to have no lines at our polling places. Wrapping up, I want to share a few final slides about information that's helpful for us on the EAC, helpful for Missoula County elections, to think about as we look towards the future. And of course, believe it or not, election season ramping up yet again. We asked voters that responded to the survey about what they believed would be the most helpful to voters in Missoula County. A plurality of respondents told us that mandating election day as a paid holiday would be the most helpful for county voters. So it's a bit surprising to me, and I loved one of the open-ended responses that we did receive for this question, which was, it doesn't just have to be a paid holiday, but 2 paid hours off of work. From there, we see issues like universal mail elections, election day voter registration, ballot drop boxes, as identified as being helpful to Missoula County voters. This next slide has a piece of information that made me feel really excited for us on the EAC and for Missoula County elections. We sought to understand what sources respondents to our survey turn to find out information about elections. This was a select all that applies, so voters could respond to more than one option. And coming out ahead with a majority of 52% is the Missoula County Elections website. This is awesome to see, especially as the mis and disinformation issues that have been plaguing elections around the country are becoming more and more salient, and also the great work of the National Association of Secretary of States and other election officials for #TrustedInfo. It seems those high frequency, high information voters that participated in the survey turned to Missoula County Elections website for their information. In addition, individuals look to newspapers, both print and electronic, national media that included television, radio, newspapers like the New York Times or the Washington Post, state and local political parties, and friends or family. So these are all important pieces of data for us to think about when we consider outreach and information sharing from the EAC moving forward. And finally, a question that we often ask is whether it's more important to prioritize conserving tax dollars or providing services. And so this question we asked respondents, if you had to choose, how would you want Missoula County to prioritize? And 2 in 3 respondents, in fact, 67% indicated that providing services to county voters is of greater importance to them than conserving county tax dollars. Of course, we all know that in the public trust, we want to balance that being thrifty and frugal with ensuring access to the ballot. That is the conclusion of this slideshow. Thank you for your time and listening. I am happy to answer any questions and also want to indicate that a report with some greater details will be provided in the not so distant future. I will be sure to send it to you, so keep your eyes peeled. Thank you all, take care, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Hi, everyone, and welcome to...
Thanks, Christina. Let's see if I can get this back up, guys. Definitely testing my technology. Hey, and we're back up. So I like this. This was critical. When we were scheduling this, I was still looking at redistricting as the process of establishing precincts and polling places together. Separating those out gives us a little bit of breathing room, but this is important information. A lot of the specific requests I had are tied to budgetary requests and redistricting and establishing polling locations. How far, how long, And do you care how much it's gonna cost? And also, I like to take this as what voters ideally would like, not necessarily what they really need. We've asked this question before, and they said 5 miles is how far they'd like to travel. And then I'm pretty sure if you went to a polling place and you asked somebody who was voting at target range if they'd mind going to the UC for the day, they'd say that might be a little far. So in a vacuum, this response and data is great. This is not a scientifically conducted survey like we've done before. I think that Christina went through and did a fantastic job of helping explain that this is not how we conduct a survey to extrapolate information that's a representative sample of the county. This is a self-selection. These are voters who decided that, yes, they saw that QR code. They were technologically savvy because it was only via QR code. They scanned it, and they got to the website and completed this survey. These are high information voters. These are voters who are doing all of these steps and processes. And we separated this out between people who are polling place voters and mail ballot voters, noting that, guess what, in Missoula County, most people are both. If you vote at a polling place, you also vote by mail when it's a municipal election, when it's a school election. So if they said that, yes, I vote by mail and I vote at a polling place, they got the opportunity to answer both sets of questions. Now, what does it mean for me? I will still want a 0-minute wait time at a polling place. But if we consolidate polling places and it's a 15-minute wait, I don't think that voters are going to revolt. This is not scientifically conducted. One of the things I was looking at is budgetary savings on producing new envelopes without a flap, saving ourselves 2 cents per envelope over the count of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of envelopes. That's a big savings. So with this, we see that voters appreciate that flattening. We've never asked voters about that. No county has it other than Missoula County, and I've been receiving multiple bids on producing envelopes without the flap. This is helpful to help us look and utilize to make decisions. This is great. We got more respondents with this survey than the one we conducted in 2019 on our own through the EAC, through SurveyMonkey. And it's a great way to reach out to voters, but this is not a representative sample. And I'm not going to take this and say, you know what, Missoula County voters feel that this, and this are the best. These respondents for this survey, these 269 high information voters who completed this survey, this is what they stated. This is important because we do have groups out that are not using information correctly, trying to extrapolate information off of sample sizes that are not correct, trying to extrapolate information off of not representative samples. And so this is a big difference. We want to gain information. We want to be responsive, but this is not something that we can use to state. Equivocally, voters in Missoula County feel this way, but it helps us a lot. Some of these budgetary requests, specifically flaps, there was the potential at the beginning of this time that we could be looking at new technology to help increase the accuracy of voter signature verification. We'd have to eliminate flaps. This requires the Secretary of State to certify new equipment, so we're going to put that on the back burner. And we're going to approach that again at a different point in time, but it helps us make decisions. Sorry, Candy.
Okay, so you've got 236 people that answered that survey about that flap, and you didn't tell them whether it's going to be $5 more per envelope for the flap or not. I know you said 2 cents to us, but when we said, is it important? People didn't know what the trade-off was. And now they don't know that the difference is whether somebody's going to have to read that signature by hand or read it in person or by a machine.
And by a machine was a future
So
that's not coming forward. I mean, like, that was gathering information if that looked like a potential option. This was really just to gather information. One of the things we've heard is Missoula County is the only county that has a flap. Why is that? And we state that when you're voting by mail, your signature is your ID, and we don't want your ID floating through USPS without some protection. As I look at it, no other county is doing it. It is a cost savings measure, but we got to ask voters how they feel about it. And as we've explained it to people, unless they're totally off their rocker, they're like, well, that makes sense. And some people say, well, that just seems odd. And you know, as we look at this, this is just more information that we have to help make decisions. The reality is, we're not gonna get that equipment certified for a while, if ever. And with that process going through, now I have even more to state that I want to keep that flap on there. And then if this looks a little bit different, we can ask it again in a different way and say, this is coming down the pipe. We have the opportunity to change these envelopes. This cost savings means this. We weren't even close to there. It was, is this important to you? There's a lot we can do with this data, polling places, vote by mail, how they gain information. That was fantastic. Also remember, these are high information voters. This is not your average Joe. You had to self-select QR code into this survey. They get everything you were getting at, sorry. Yeah,
Did I hear you correctly to say that the flap makes it more difficult to verify, signatures?
no, other states have the ability to utilize equipment where a machine does the signature verification. And it is not possible to do that with the flap on the ballot. And so we were looking at, is this a potential? Could this come in the future? And do voters care about that flap? So it's not really harder. Guess what? We could still run them through the machine. We just need to take the flap off, which is what we currently do. But voters, the vast majority of the people who responded to this survey said that they think it's important. I've leaned towards additional security is not bad. With voters, the respondents of this survey, it's hard. Even I want to say, with voters in Missoula County saying this, with the respondents of this survey saying that they would prioritize services over cost savings and that they appreciate that flat for the security, that makes that easy for me to say, we're just going to continue forward and we won't have the ability to potentially save X amount of dollars over the future, but we can revisit that as it becomes more pertinent. So no, it doesn't make it necessarily harder. We're looking at a lot of future plans. And we're not at the point where we can ask voters those detailed questions that state, this is how signatures are verified. Do you like this? We have this potential and here are the impacts. What are your thoughts?
Right.
If we get to that point, I'd want that scientific survey. I'd want a real representative sample size. And we've been working with the Board of County Commissioners to try and help establish what that good time frame is. We want to seek information from voters and we're doing a good job at it. Obviously, this is miles different than conducting a scientifically conducted survey, which the reason you pay for it is we're going through to get that representative sample size. Their content.
Very hard to.
Oh, and it costs more the harder it gets. And then it becomes a bigger budget request. But if we need to make critical decisions that we want to be able to speak for the voters, we need to conduct the survey in a scientific fashion. If we want to help shape future decisions, this is a good way to look at it. 3 to 5 miles didn't change much from before. 15 minutes as an average wait time. Our current wait times, Cameo, what's the current wait time at the library? Tell me 0.
I think there was no way.
Yeah, most polling places was 0. I was really hoping you were at like 35 minutes. But you know, as we see that, I've been pushing for this 0, 0, 0. If we consolidate, it will not be a 0-minute wait time. And when we asked this random selection of self-selecting voters, they said 15 minutes is appropriate. Guess what? We can put a lot of voters into a school before we go from 0-minute wait time to 15-minute wait time.
But it would be longer than 5 miles to get to.
It's funny because in Missoula County, from one side of the Missoula city to the other, it's 5 miles.
I mean, it's the county voters.
And so that's one of the pieces of data. There's going to be crosses that she can run. One of the things I want to see before we start working heavily on polling places is what's the cross between the urban voters, which was a vast majority, and how far they're willing to travel, and the rural voters. Because that impact is different. I would expect a rural voter who lives by Clearwater Junction, I can guarantee they travel 20 miles to go to a polling place in Potomac or in Sealy, you know what I mean? They're probably willing to travel further than an urban voter. And while we gain this information, I'm not going to take it and say, you said 5 miles. There was one polling place in every 5 miles. We're going to use that to help guide our decisions.
So
One other comment about that. She started out that report saying that the survey was open to 100% of registered voters, which I agree. But I think it was also open to anybody that could get that link, whether they were a registered voter or not. And I'd be interested on whether there was any way to keep from somebody filling out the survey more than once.
There was a IP address limit. So if you're utilizing the same IP address, the same computer, this gets a little bit
Yeah, I know
beyond
what you
me.
mean. You could do it
You
on your
can't-
phone and your work computer and your,
But you couldn't do it from the same house.
right. So,
Which was something we prepared our staff to answer questions on.
yeah, because then.
Because it's the same IP address. If Nathan and I live together, he fills it out. It has been completed for that household and I can't complete it. It would give you a notice. We did that to make sure that no bots got in there and started dumping survey results. But we wanted to make it open, accessible, but also limited. So yeah, we had it on our website. It was so much further. I mean, we really hit it. Yeah.
I have a little bit of an issue with making any decision based on these 236 surveys, although I think the survey was really well done and I'm impressed by the survey and impressed by the results. But because the sample is so small, I have an issue with that. And I wonder, have you given any thought to putting a survey in with the ballot because the ballots come back postage? I mean, would that increase your sample if you had a simple survey?
So they were included on the instructions that went out with every ballot.
But I think Von D means something that they would fill out.
That's what I mean,
With their
exactly.
ballot.
Thank you, Todd.
Nope.
Yeah.
That
No.
would not.
I would be very cautious of getting identifying information included with somebody's vote.
It would not be legal.
The number of times we get a form or something that identifies a voter inside a secrecy envelope, I wouldn't want to encourage that in any way. But also, we're not making decisions based off of this. This is helping guide future decisions that we already have to make. This is additional information. We have to make a decision about the number of polling places, and we can do it with asking voters or without. It helps guide that decision. But I think it's helpful to reach out and at least say that there is a self-selecting group and this is what they have deemed. And then breaking it down and saying our polling place voters, how far are they willing to travel compared to our male voters and rural and urban? And so we're using this to help us with these decisions. We know that we need to take a look at what our costs are for elections, our polling places and our usage. And those questions specifically about distance and wait time are designed to help us with that.
And I understand that. I'm just asking if you don't think the sample size is so small as in the universe of the Missoula voters, it's basically irrelevant. And I wonder, even though you qualify it, and I agree with everything you're saying, wouldn't it be better and more palatable to the voters at large if there was a larger sample size or a way to get more information?
We asked for a budget request through the Elections Advisory Committee to conduct a scientifically conducted survey that would have had an accurate sample size that could extrapolate information. Unfortunately, budgets are tight. We were not approved for that. So we wanted to gain information knowing that redistricting was coming forward this year. And what better way to reach out to voters than with their ballot on their election day? And so, yes, and we will continue, I'm sure the EAC and our office, to request to gain accurate information, but there needs to be a balance because when we're looking at this, I think the last budget request was $25,000.
To do a survey?
And you know why? If you want a relative sample size, it's gonna take time. Somebody on the phone calling and calling until they can get people that meet this requirement, so they can say that this is an accurate random sample and produce a standard deviation, all the other data that Christina knows so much better than me. I always look at Cameo because she's a lot better at this data too. But we can gain that data, we can gain that information there. It is expensive because you're not self-selecting. You're truly getting that random representation. And to do that, it is somebody you're paying to be on the phone calling.
200 calls to get a single response.
Yeah, I did that once as a job. Nathan did that once as a job. Phone surveying is,
It's getting harder and harder.
yeah,
because
and also
landlines-
you can't call all cell phones.
Yeah.
So yes, we've been through these approaches and this is a good area in lieu of what we requested, which is really similar to your recommendation. And for those of you on the computer, that was Von Dean. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the question. What would you consider an accurate sampling? I don't know, but I'm just saying, 236 people out of a universe of 80,000 voters is not significant. But what do you? I don't know, and I would let somebody that does that for a living determine what that number is.
And really it boils down to what gives you an accurate standard deviation, this formula that will provide it. And this is where I really lean on other groups. Big Sky Polls, we reached out to MIT. Big Sky Polls has conducted our surveys in the past. It's the University of Montana. We've reached out to MIT. Guess what? When we do this, it's government spending. I'm going to take 3 budget requests. I'm going to go with the lowest bidder. And so as we go through this, that's where we would see it. And you can reference that from the 2015 or 2020 surveys. It will say how many respondents and to what gave a good standard deviation. I'm just really highlighting that because I know we have reports out from groups that look so official, look so good. And they take data like this and state that based off of this data, we can extrapolate across the entire state this. That's not how it works. And so we love getting information from voters, but we're going to also start off with a caveat that this is just information. This is not representation. I can't extrapolate information. That's just not how this works. Okay, guys, I've hit quite a bit. Questions? We hit in here. You guys online. I'm so sorry, Travis, Sue.
You're good.
Now, with this, I will send out the link and get that on YouTube for this. In order to do so, I have to do some magic to get it downloaded and uploaded. So it's taking a little bit longer. We played it here, and then Christina will provide information similar to the reports from the other surveys so that we can have that and we'll post it on the website with a big disclaimer right at the beginning that states that this is not a scientifically conducted survey. But then voters can see, members of the public can see, yeah, we're responsive, we're reaching out, we're asking. And when you think about the number of other counties, not just in the state, but nationwide that participate like this, we're among a select few. And I love it.
I didn't notice.
You didn't notice it?
No.
It's so hard
Yeah.
because it was in the instructions. We could not alter the front. It was on the back side of the instructions. We put it on social media. We did a press release on it. We hit it hard. When we did this in 2019, we hit it as hard as we could. But putting it on the instructions meant that 50,000 times it went out. And we're already printing 2-sided instructions. We just added it to it. The reality is putting in an insert would have cost more money, would have taken time from our staff. This was the least expensive way to get it out. Noting that we knew there were some drawbacks to this. It's on the backside of your instructions. It's also available in your polling place. It's a QR code. Raise your hand if you utilize QR codes on a regular basis. I know I do, but not everybody. And people were like, what happens if you don't have a computer? You can't respond. This is not a sample size. This does not represent, but it's good data from high engagement voters. Okay, Rebecca, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Sorry, I just had a thought. I know this is included on the instructions and all the things you just said. Someone had said, why can't we have them send this back with their ballot? And I understand you not wanting identifying information. However, would it be possible if we were going to do something like this where they have to enter some sort of like the serial number of their ballot or something like that so that we know we're not getting duplicate entries or responses?
So going forward, if we're in the position where we needed to conduct a survey on our own to gain information, it's really hard because I wouldn't want to link it to the ballot ID or voter ID. There is no serial number on the physical ballot. It is unidentifiable. I wouldn't want it identified.
Ballot ID, that's what I meant. Thank you.
No, no problem. But also, as we go through that, one of the really nice touches about having it only digital, we don't have to recompile this data. The cost of this survey is 5 hours of my time, multiple hours of volunteering on Christina, and printing the handouts for the polling place through the county print shop. It's all about limiting the cost on this. Now, if this is something, the EAC has been a big guidance in this. If this is something that we want to look at, we want to propose, we want to look into coming forward with this. I mean, I don't want to start jumping down the line, but the next meeting happens to be April 11th, 2023, directly in the budget season, directly in the time to say, like, if we want to look at doing something that may cost more, that may get us better responses, better information, that's the time. And that might be a great area for the EAC to make a recommendation to the commission and the election administrator. Mindful of time.
Do any other counties conduct surveys of voters like this?
Not in Missoula. I know that nationwide, I think there are 12 that I was aware of. That is a great question for Christina. She lives and breathes this information about administering elections. And she would probably have some good info on how many out there. But in Missoula and in Montana, we're it. Okay, guys, that's what I had for the update and for the new business in there. I'll pass it back over to you, Travis.
Okay. So next on the agenda is just comments from committee members.
Any more comments from committee members? Sorry, I'm just repeating him. I can't tell if everybody can hear me.
Susan, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Well, last time we had talked a little bit about like outreach education to high schoolers or young voters. And I guess I would just a little update, I guess. One of my son's in 8th grade, and one of his teachers told me recently that he is on a teacher committee that has just gotten together statewide and is coming up with a standardized, I think it's just middle school, but it might be high school also, curriculum. So I guess that would fall on you, Bradley, but that's just an avenue to maybe include voting information for all those young and soon to be voters. Just thought I'd put it out there.
I love it. I can easily put together a great handout that could go to all of the different schools. 8th grade's tough. That information would be, here come elections, and when you turn 17 under Montana state law, you can start to register to vote. Mm-hmm. I had kind of envisioned looking more at the high schools out of it, but I don't think it's hard to say, like in Montana, this is what it looks like. We run school elections in the spring. On the odd number of years, we have city elections. We have primary elections on even numbered years and general elections. Our president is elected on an even numbered year. Explain some of those basics. And then talk about how it works. To vote, you register with your county nationwide. In Montana, to do so, you have to be 17. You have to be 18 by the next regularly scheduled election, a citizen, and provide a driver's license or social number. So I think I can put that together, no problem. And I'd look at like a middle school and then a high school one. And the high school one is action-based.
Yeah.
The middle school one is, here's some information about voting and trying to, I love this, Susan. This is something I've been striving for. Trying to discuss it in the 8th grade level. This is what voting means. And in general, for the public, that's something I've been striving for, like you would to an 8th grader. So that's really helpful for me. And then I can make up a document for the EAC for future work that is more of a call to action for high schoolers in that 17-year age. Does that seem close to what you guys are shooting for?
Well, he's just working with a committee of teachers statewide to just update the social studies curriculum. So, it'd be a very minor part of that, I guess, because, social studies includes back to cavemen and things like that. So, modern voting would be small slice of it, but I guess I'm just saying, well, people are, working to include that on a statewide level. So, that's nice.
Absolutely. Susan, you and I should follow up on that a little bit to not eat up everybody's time. That makes so much more sense. I was really working hard on that and I was like, boy, eighth grade's kind of young.
Yeah.
Like you're never going to hear me say, no, I want to talk about voting. But yeah, I think that's good. And I'd love some emails to just kind of see where that sits and how we want to proceed forward on that, because I thought it was a great idea.
Sure.
Any other comments from committee members? All right, so hearing none, we already have our next meeting established. I'm assuming Nathan will be sending out minutes as well as a call for additional agenda items. So, did we already mention the special dates down below, or is there anything specific you want to mention about that, or?
Yeah, let me tag into that really quick because I hit it in my update recorded. Candidate filing is ongoing. February 6th is the close for special districts, with an additional month through till March for school districts. School districts have an additional filing period. The election is coming up on Tuesday, the 2nd of May. And for this, as we currently stand, noting candidate filing is far from over, no school districts or special districts are slated to go to an election. We do have some that may have requested levies. Many school districts will request a levy election as a placeholder and cancel this as they get their funding from the state. You may have seen some stuff statewide on the news about pushing to get funding out to schools. That's why they have a later closing. And also, that's why you'll always see from our office that we pass a resolution to hold the election and then cancel it, because they say, well, we didn't need that funding, or we did. If they don't pass the resolution, they cannot run the election. So many times they pass it as a placeholder. So we're in the middle of that process. And you can find it all online at Missoula Votes. Really quickly, I did want to say, Rebecca, I pulled it up during that. It was Senate Bill 86 is the redistricting bill. Its sponsor is Senator Morjo, so local delegation. I love it when there's a local person as a sponsor of a bill, because I can reach out to him directly and say, Shane, this needs to change, or hey, Lynn, this is crazy. And state, like, this is where we're looking at on these bills.
Thank you so much, Bradley.
Anytime. Sorry, I wish I had that present. I've just said so many bills that I'm like, I want to get this right.
Apologies for my barking dog. So, all right. So I guess if nobody else has anything else, if somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn, we can be done.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Those opposed say no.
Hi.
Thanks everybody for a good meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Travis.
Yep. You guys take care.